Welcome to the show, everybody. Joseph Robert, the fantasy football counselor. Today we're talking the latest news and notes in regards to NFL and, of course, wide receiver must-haves for fantasy football 2020. And we've got our regular guest here, Tom Santinello here. We're going to be talking throughout the year. Ideally, our shows are going to be coming out Wednesdays, talking everything from starts and sits, from waiver wire to everything, positional rankings to everything.
Over-unders.
What's that?
Over-unders.
Over-unders. We're going to be talking everything. So, Tom, you're here with us. You know football very well. You're out there in Florida. How are things, man, being home right now?
Nice. I went for a run by the beach this morning.
Right.
Enjoying life. It's kind of quiet out there, but hopefully things get back to normal soon.
Hopefully.
Not much football news, but we can touch on a few things. How you doing up there?
I'm doing great up north here. It's still a little bit cold. We got the sun shining. And, man, I just heard the news. We're going to be talking wide receivers, everybody, and guys you must have. But before, I want to talk about some of the trending news and stuff. From what I'm hearing, Goodell talking about having the draft as per regular date there near the end of April. He's not pushing it back due to circumstances. What do you think, man? I mean, the big question is, you follow football. You have some football friends, some actual NFL players now. Won't get into that too much. But you're kind of like the feet on the street. What do you think? Is the season going to happen? Because a lot of uncertainty, people getting scared that the season might not happen. How do you think this plays out?
I mean, they're so far away from basketball. Basketball's in season. Baseball's already supposed to start, I think, this week. But, yeah, I think they will. I mean, listen, I can't predict the virus and everything that goes on. But, I mean, the draft has nothing to do with social gathering. I think that's the goal. I don't know if they're going to have to implement rules, but that's a long ways away. I can see them getting rid of off-season workouts and just starting in July in training camp. A lot of people say worst case scenario, the things will be over in June, July. Worst case, but nobody really knows for sure. But I would think so. Besides the UFC, they're probably one of the most aggressive leagues, to go on business as usual.
Now, you've been around football a long time. So if this was condensed, okay, so how long do you think training camp would run on a condensed level? So what's the latest they could push it? So let's say they start training camp, first week of August or even like late July. Would it be able to – can we squeeze it in to have a September start timeline-wise? How would it work out?
Well, yeah, because there's always a week off between the last week of preseason and the first week of the season, so I could see that happening.
So how many weeks of training camp do you think they really need to be ready, like on a minimum?
I mean, the coaches want as much as they can, but probably about 4 weeks.
4 weeks kind of on a minimum. You don't think
you can do 3 weeks, but they really need 4 weeks. You got to get in football shape.
Right.
You got to hit, and then you got the preseason game. So I really like a good solid 3 weeks of work. Right. But, you have all those other camps before, and you have new head coaches implementing the offenses. There's a lot of other stuff that goes into it, and that's stuff that people can factor. If you have a new head coach this year, say in Carolina, he took the OC from LSU. Right. They're implementing a brand-new offense with a brand-new quarterback. Now, granted, he can get started on some stuff now because he just signed a contract. But in order to – the more reps those guys get together, Carolina just signed, Robbie Andersen, a new receiver. Right. They got DJ Moore. So there's no chemistry anywhere over there. So the more reps guys like that have, I think they need a little more time. But teams with new head coaches always get an extra week or so. And they report a week early.
What do you know about Carolina's head coach? Because the big question is I did a show on CMC versus Saquon, who's the first overall pick for 2020 fantasy football. How is the new coaching going to affect, you think, CMC and his production? 116 receptions last season, phenomenal season out of Christian McCaffrey.
He's a head coach similar to the guy the Giants got. He's not going to be calling the plays. That's why they hired and paid a lot of money for Brady from LSU. And it's really going to be based on his offense. This head coach is more of a leader. And that's what, more of that leader, motivational guy. And he knows his football, but that's what he is. He's not an offensive coach that's going to take reins of the offense. So I think you have to look at the offensive coordinator. He was at LSU. I don't know what he's going to do with the running back. He definitely threw the ball last year a lot with Burrow. So I can see him. They brought in Bridgewater to kind of lead the game. They're probably going to revolve the offense around McCaffrey. You have to, in a sense.
PJ Walker takes a starting job there. PJ Walker, for those who don't know, played for the XFL, looked amazing, throwing the ball to Cam Phillips, looking dynamic, throwing the ball, good pocket presence, good accuracy from what we saw. Do you think PJ Walker takes the job from Bridgewater?
No, he played for Matt Rule at Temple. So did Robby Andersen, I believe, and so did another linebacker they signed. I mean, he's trying to get a lot of the guys he coached, not trying to, but he's gotten a few guys he coached in college.
Right.
So I think he just likes those guys. He's comfortable. He knows that they can produce. When he was at Temple, he had some, I think Al Golden was there first. They used to take a lot of troubled kids. I mean, Temple's, it was never a football school, always a basketball school. So they put it on the map before him with Golden. He came in, he did well. And then, he took the Baylor job. He did well there. So guys like playing for him. He's always puts a good staff together. He's a player's coach. He's a really good coach. And I think he likes the guys that he can trust. And that's what happens when you go into a new job. You want to, like, even in Miami, Flores brought a couple Patriots in free agency this year on the defensive side of the ball. So he wants the guys he can trust. He probably, maybe he's a guy that doesn't make – I wouldn't even count on him to make the team. Maybe he doesn't make the team. They did trade Kyle Allen, by the way.
Right.
But I can see him not making the team and just being on a practice squad. Or, I don't know. I mean,
PJ Walker has come out and said, I'm okay with being a backup, but I'm looking to start. Obviously, he's going to say that. Players talk like that, right? I mean, it's confidence in themselves. But, I mean, he's
got a long way to go.
What's that?
He has a long way to go.
So Bridgewater.
I mean, he's been in the XFL for a reason. So
yeah, Bridgewater won 5 games with the Saints when Breeze was out. Looked pretty good. Is he for real, man? What do you think of Bridgewater?
I mean, I think he's an above-average quarterback. I don't think he's an elite. He's definitely not a pure pocket passer, top elite like a Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees. Right. Can he manage a game and be above average, go 10-6? Probably. He had that really good year in Minnesota. Right. I mean, unfortunately, I don't know how much the injury was really, really bad. I don't know how much it has affected him now. He probably won't run as much. I think he's a good quarterback. I don't know if he's a championship quarterback. A perennial lead, he's a good players like him. I think he'll be a good leader and he'll fit that team with what they want to do.
We're talking wide receivers. How does this impact Robbie Anderson? Is he a guy you must have for fantasy? Is a guy or is he going to be the still one trick pony, deep threat, boomer bust games? And DJ Moore, is he the real deal? What do you think?
It's hard because I don't know if you can look at Robbie Anderson, that he reached his potential in New York, or some people say he didn't because the Jets organization has been horrible from the coaching staff. I mean, Le'Veon Bell hasn't played great. Everything's been a mess over there. And, I heard he got offered more money to play elsewhere. And he just didn't want to be in New York, from what I've heard. He didn't want to be there.
Right.
He turned down more money to be here because he wanted to be here. A lot of people don't want to play for the Jets. I mean, they failed in free agency. They didn't sign a lot of big, a couple big linemen. They got a couple backups. It's a tough organization to play for. They've never really, Joe Douglas, I think he's a good GM trying to turn things around, but I think he needs a new head coach. So I don't think people like playing for Adam Gase.
Right.
So as far as to what you said, I'm sorry, Robbie Anderson in Carolina. I mean, DJ Moore, I can see him taking a step up, but I can see him getting a lot of touchdowns this year. Joe Brady's going to, the offensive coordinator over there, is going to throw the ball. He's going to want to, take some shots. I mean, it matters on the rest of the team, how they gel, the O-line and all that stuff, as you know, but I think he's going to take some shots and he's going to have a little bit better numbers than he did last year.
All right. Anything else in the news and notes that we need to touch on here? We talked about the season still happening. People concerned there. Couple moves here, moves with Bridgewater.
I think the Falcons are going to be boom or bust.
Yeah.
They're either going to, go 11-5, something like that, or 3-13. I mean, it just seems like they're one or the other. Every time you see a team put together this dream team, great quarterback, great receiver, great running back, it seems to never work. The coach is on the hot seat. It's probably his last chance.
Right.
And I think there'll be boom or bust. We can talk, we'll talk about Tampa Bay with the receivers in a little bit, but I think they're going to – it's funny because he went to Bruce Arians, who's just going to throw the ball. And I think I like Tampa in that division. And some other news and notes, I mean, we can go through them as we go through some receivers and stuff like that.
So give me a wide receiver you must have, a guy that you think – I know you don't play fantasy as much as everybody else, but I get you in here more for the technical, real football kind of point of view, whereas I'm a little bit biased, particularly strictly to fantasy football. And again, you look at all the defensive matchups, you look at the team, you look at the coaches, you look at everything. So give me some wide receivers that you think are going to perform on a realistic level, essentially, and could reflect to fantasy. What is a wide receiver you must have this year if you're playing fantasy?
Just guys that I like. I mean, I like a few guys to step up this year, and I like Hunter Renfrow in Oakland to have a really good second year.
Right.
They don't really have many. I know they'll probably draft one or two receivers. I like Galladay in Detroit. If Stafford plays Yeah, I think he's going to be a really good one this year. I think Detroit's going to take a step up and win some more games.
Right.
I mean, as under the radar guys, I don't want to say he's too much under the radar, but I like those two guys. I think, like I said, the Raiders going to Vegas, Hunter Renfrow, I can see him being kind of like a Cooper Kupp type of guy.
So he's
Maybe.
going to be what we call a fantasy football sleeper, everybody. So Renfrow, a guy you could target, because they didn't really acquire anybody else, did they, for wide receiver? Not anyone that's going to make a significant impact. So
No. I mean, you got the obvious guys, I think, like Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins.
right.
They're going to throw the ball a lot in Arizona.
I think it's going to be a decline for Hopkins. I'm looking at the target count. I saw Fitzgerald max out last year at 109 targets, and he's supposed to be their wide receiver one. And who was the other guy? Christian Kirk, similar type of numbers, just over 100 targets. And now you've got them probably still staying there. And now you got the addition of Hopkins there. You've got Drake, who likes to catch the ball in the backfield. I mean, between David Johnson and Drake last year, there was over 100 targets. So that's 300 targets already gone. Mathematically, for Hopkins to perform on a top 5 level, you need 150 to 170 targets.
Yeah, but
is there enough to go around? Is it going to be distributed and the chemistry isn't there, right?
So it depends on the quarterback, though, too.
Yeah.
If you look at the good quarterbacks over the years, I mean, in New England, when Brady had Moss, he would throw to him a lot more because he was Randy Moss. He was better than everybody else.
Right.
I mean, Roethlisberger would throw to Antonio Brown, even though he had a lot of other good players. If he can lock in with him and he's his go-to guy, the other guy's targets will decrease. It really matters. And I don't know if Kyler Murray has that in him. The spread offense, which, I mean, the coach ran at Texas Tech. He's going to throw the ball a lot. And you're right. In those offenses, you can spread the ball around and get in trouble and guys will lose targets. But you don't want that so much in the NFL. You need a go-to guy. You need a guy on 3rd and 7. Who do you go to? You need that.
Right.
And if he's comfortable and they have the rapport and the chemistry, like you kind of just mentioned, then he will be that guy to take the next step.
That's 150 targets to make him at least fantasy top 5 relevant, which is, I think, where everybody's going to want to draft him and acquire him and think of him as, the same Hopkins that he was in Houston. I think there's going to be a bit of a decline there. I think people will be disappointed. But again, like I said, the ceiling is there. Anything can happen.
But Amari Cooper in Dallas with a new offense.
I like him. New coach, new offense. You got to imagine they're going to throw the ball more, which is a bit of a concern now with Zeke because Pollard came in, got some volume at the running back position. I like Cooper, Gallup, both those guys. I think they'll eat. I don't know. I think Cooper's obviously going to potentially get more targets. I like Cooper this year. I think he's going to be better than he was last year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what about Mike Evans in Tampa? I can see them throwing deep a lot, him kind of getting the deep ball and making up for maybe some catches with some extra touchdowns.
Yeah, I did analysis on this, and the way that Brady spread the ball last year, that's a bit of a concern to me. Even their running back, James White, had 95 targets. So I'm looking at it and thinking, okay, well, they need a running back first. I don't think Ronald Jones is a guy. We just saw Peyton Barber get shipped off now. He's out. He's going to be the RB4 now with the Redskins behind Bryce Love there, Adrian Peterson, and Darius Guice. So Peyton Barber's career is pretty much done. He got, a 2-year, $3 million contract, which is pretty much peanuts for a running back in the NFL. So it's going to be spread around. Now, who is he going to go to? Is he going to go to Godwin? Is he going to go to Evans? That's a big question there, Tom. I'm not sure who he's going to go to.
I think he would go to Evans just because he's got some speed, he's got the height, and he's got the separation with against the DBs. Right. And I think that's going to end up being his go-to guy. I think he's going to implement the tight end a lot, though.
I think so too. Howard should get some volume there as well. But in regards to both these guys finishing top 10 in regards to fantasy points, where the mainstream consensus kind of have them top 10, both of these guys, because Godwin finished second. So the mainstream is kind of reluctant on pulling him out of the top 10. And Evans didn't finish in the top 10. So they think because of Evans' talent.
They missed a few games.
Yeah. They got to both put him in the top 10. I don't know about that.
Speaking of missing games, what about Adam Thielen? He has no Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, that's a good point. Ton of upside there.
Off year,
yeah. It's going to be interesting. I think he's got a ton of upside. Depends if they draft an ace wide receiver. And I think a lot of my decision happens after the draft because we got a big wide receiver class coming in. CeeDee Lamb, Judy. Where did these guys end up? Wherever they end up.
I like Judy. I think he's the most ready. I think he's the one that's most ready.
Where do you think? Where do you think?
I don't know. Even if you put him in, if Miami doesn't take a quarterback, I think they should take him. I can see him ending up at the Raiders. I can see him ending up in Miami. Even with Fitzpatrick, he loves to sling the ball. If that's who they go with next year, he's going to have a big year. If he goes to the Raiders, I can see him being the number one there right away. I mean, there's a lot of teams, Philly, but they're going to be picking a little too late to get him probably.
Right.
It just matters who do you like as a team? Do you like CeeDee Lamb, T. Higgins? Do you like Judy? It just matters who they like. So one guy can easily slip from top 5 to top 15.
Right. Going back to running or wide receiver must-haves for 2020 fantasy football, a guy I like, I wanted to get your feedback on it because you probably know about the quarterback more. I did meet this quarterback last year, Drew Lock and the Broncos. Now, Drew Lock won, I think, 4 out of his 5 games last season. Didn't look spectacular, but looked okay. Does he step up this year? I think Courtland Sutton will draft a wide receiver to complement Sutton this year. But what do you think of Courtland Sutton and that Drew Lock connection this season?
I like it.
Yeah.
I think they can be a surprise team. They still have a good defense. I know they lost a couple DBs. They franchised the safety. I really think that's going to be a good team. As far as, going over the fantasy side, I love Sutton. I don't know how Drew Lock, I think he can win football games, and I think he's a leader. So I think that's going to be a really good 1-2 tandem. I like that.
You took one of my guys. I'm all in on Kenny Galladay. A big reason of that is I was all over him last year, Mini Megatron. This year with Stafford healthy, that could be more consistent in regards to production. Last year, we had the different quarterbacks coming. It was a disaster. This year, if Stafford and him connect, there's going to be a ton of volume. Marvin Jones was just hoarding away volume. It was a pain in the ass last year, but I think this is a big year. Galladay steps up. I absolutely love him, and I think he slips under people's radar still for fantasy.
Yeah, I think they're going to take a step up. They were playing well early in the season before Stafford got hurt. He's got some more guys he signed this year. And he's just trying, he got rid of Darius Slay. Even though he's a good player, he wants guys that fit his culture. But I think he needs to produce this year because this is his 3rd year as a coach. So I think they're going to sling it. And I think that'll be a good, no matter what, he's the one that gets targets this year, I think, like you said.
As of right now, we're at the end of March. The number 1 wide receiver I have, and I think it's a bounce back year. Let me know based on coaching situation where Aaron Rodgers is now in his career. Can Davante Adams have another amazing year? Because last year he got injured. They ran the ball more. Aaron Jones was a beneficiary there. And again, they switched their game. They went from more of a pass team to a run team. Do they go back to more of a pass team for 2020? What are your thoughts?
I think they're going to be similar to what they were. I mean, Davante has only had 1 season over 1,000 yards in his career. He had some injuries last year, so I think he needs to stay healthy, number 1. But I think he can. I agree with you. I think he can be easily one of the top 1 or 2 receivers in football. Stay healthy, and he's just got to when he signed that extension, he was reaching his peak and about to hit his prime. So I think these next 2 years are going to be the biggest of his career if he stays healthy. And no matter what, they're going to throw the ball. So he doesn't have, remember a few years ago, Jordy Nelson. He doesn't have any other receivers really as a huge threat in my mind to him. So by default, I think you have to put him in that top 3 as well.
Again, we're getting Tom's point of view more from a reality standpoint. He's analyzing the team, the offense, the coaches, the schemes, everything's being analyzed. So I'm just kind of I have guys I like, but we're just kind of reinforcing some of my thoughts. 2 other guys I'm kind of debating in my head. One guy a little more weight, a little bit heavier in regards to fantasy. People like him more. And that is A.J. Brown versus Debo Samuel. Can you kind of weigh in on how the offenses are going to look there with Jimmy Garoppolo? Then you've got Tannehill. I'm not really sold on Tannehill yet. Could be a step forward this year. I'm interested, man. First of all, I think we both agree that Tannehill's a little overpaid. What are your thoughts? Who is going to emerge more? Is it Debo Samuel or is it A.J. Brown? One side note, I think the 49ers are going to probably draft a receiver. We don't know. That could dip into Samuel's stock a little bit for fantasy. But what are your thoughts on this situation for both?
I mean, it's a tough one because I'm not too sold on Tannehill, but I think A.J. Brown can put up he can put up stats. I don't think he's going to have, 1,400 yards a mega season. Samuel, I think, is a better player. I just, 49ers run the ball a lot. They run the ball first, and sometimes I hate to use the word gimmicky, but they'll get a little gimmicky with him. Right. And I don't think he's going to be a guy that they want to make into a true one where they throw him the ball 12 times a game, 14 times a game, and focus solely on him being that. Maybe he wasn't ready last year. Maybe he will be ready this year. I like him as a better player, more potent to the offense. Kyle Shanahan is very good in getting the strengths of the players, even when he had, remember, Tyler Gabriel in Atlanta, guys that just shine. So I think he's using him to his strengths. And if he can develop in the off season, off the field, and get better, I think he would be a better player. Consistency-wise, Brown will probably have a similar year, but Debo has a higher upside.
Yeah, for sure. And I think they're both going to be sleepers. I think Brown will go higher in drafts based on what I've seen this offseason, the early looks at some of the rankings. Brown will go higher, but I think I like Debo. It's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out. Again, I'm not sold on Tannehill being that stud. He was so super consistent for fantasy last year. Showed he's the real deal essentially for fantasy, but is that going to continue, or was this kind of like a Cinderella year? That is something we got yet to see.
They did lose a lineman, and they also weren't even that good last year as far as a great team. They weren't a great team. They were 9-7, I believe. I mean, I know people, looking at it from fantasy perspective, but you need to take a step back. They were one game from missing the playoffs.
Right.
So I know there's 7 teams probably in the playoffs this year. But with that said, I don't think I think they got hot at the end, won a couple games in the playoffs, and I don't think they're built to go further than they did last year,
right,
at all.
You know the Steelers very well, obviously, knowing Martavis throughout the years, friends with him and a couple other Steelers. I know you know those guys. Deante Johnson last year, 92 targets, 59 receptions, 680 yards, 5 touchdowns, 157 fantasy points, finished 41st amongst wide receivers. Do you think he takes a leap forward? Because we go back to 2018, we saw Antonio Brown and Juju both finishing the top 10, 168 targets for Brown, 166 for Juju, a ton of volume there. Juju went down because Big Ben went down in regards to fantasy value last year. Do you think Deante Johnson is elite enough to be a solid wide receiver, to maybe even a wide receiver 1 there? What are your thoughts on Deante?
I don't think he's going to be the one. I think Ben has a lot of rapport with Juju. He played a couple years with him.
Right.
So no, I don't think so. I think if anything, he would go down, and Ben would incorporate maybe the tight end a little bit more, but he may use him more as a deep threat in some other areas too. But no, I don't think so. He can't be the one over there. Juju has to stay healthy. Yeah. And I think Juju is definitely going to go back with Ben. I don't know what the results are going to be, but I think that's going to be the first choice for sure.
Is Ebron exciting there? Will Ben really utilize Eric Ebron? Probably in the red zone, right? I'm assuming quite a bit.
They're going to try to. They like weapons over there. If you remember, they had Le'Veon Bell as a receiver, Vance McDonald, Jesse James. Right. He spreads the ball around a lot of times too to those guys. If you're not the number one, sometimes you'll have 1 or 2 targets, 0 catches on the day.
Right.
So some games Ebron will probably have 4 or 5 catches, 6, 7 catches. Other times he won't have a catch. I think it's going to be one of those situations with a guy like that.
Thoughts on Big Ben's beard? I'm thinking until this quarantine's over, I'm going to grow a beard. What do you think? We should both do it. What are your thoughts?
That's I don't know. A lot of people are taking this quarantine in different perspectives. So
he looks like Bigfoot, and apparently, I guess this virus can actually sit on hair. So you're just making yourself a bigger target when you got a beard like that. Big Ben looks like a crazy lumberjack right now.
Yeah, he does. Hopefully he stayed in shape, and see how he performs this year. I don't know. I mean, they want to run the ball. I know that with Connor. He wants to throw the ball. He loves to throw the ball. So we got to see how many years he has left in him. That's the other thing.
Maybe 1, 2.
I mean, he was hurt. If he goes down, I think you just don't touch anybody on that team.
I'm going to throw some names out here to wrap this show up here, and you can talk about whichever one you feel you want to talk about in regards to wide receiver must-haves. I'll give you some players that have some upside. Then, again, you pick and choose one or all or any of them you want to talk about here. DJ Shark, I'm going to throw some names here. Terry McLaurin, Tyreek Hill, Curtis Samuel, Mike Williams, a couple other guys here maybe. Sterling Shepard. Any of these guys, do you think they come back, have a good, solid year?
I think Tyreek Hill can. I think they tried to show – I mean, first of all, they signed him for cheap because he had those domestic violence issues. Right. So they got a steal on him. Otherwise, it would have been a lot bigger of a contract. Right. So I think they're going to utilize him, and they're the team to beat. So I think he will for sure. Then I also think what was the other guy you mentioned? It was the first guy you mentioned.
Mentioned a couple. McLaren?
Yeah, McLaren. It's tough because I think he's going to build some rapport with Haskins that he has already, and I think I like him. I just don't know. I think that team, I mean, the Redskins are kind of a mess. Trent Williams, that whole situation's horrible. Right. He's got 1 year, $14 million left on the deal. he wants $20 million a year. They have to move him. Problem is they want, from what I hear, a second round pick, and he wants an extension. It's usually one or the other. Guys don't want to give up that much and pay somebody. But there's teams like the Jets that do need a left tackle really bad, and someone needs to take advantage. I mean, speaking of not taking advantage, the Jets have no receivers. They have nothing. I mean, I don't know. They just look like a bottom feeder.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not even sold on Darnold to begin with. And then Bell's kind of stuck in that situation. And everyone's like, yeah, I draft Bell last year, first round. I'm like, no, man, like it's not a good situation for Bell.
No, I don't see it. Like, even like what you said with Chargers, they got Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, two good receivers. I don't think they're going to be great ever. But they have Tyrod Taylor coming in. He is not going to be consistent. I think they need to draft somebody, and it depends who falls to them. And Tyrod Taylor can come in and he can win you some football games, but he's not going to sling it in the pocket and give a guy a 1,400-yard season like those guys are capable of, probably in the right situation. I think Mike Williams, he had a lot of potential coming out of college. He's never really reached it. I think, he can be a solid receiver, 1,000 yards a year. Right. But I just think that quarterback situation, I think the head coach is probably done after this year. That team, I mean, they couldn't score last year. They were in most of their games went under, in case you haven't noticed. Their defense was decent. They had some injuries, though. I'm not a Chargers guy. I'm selling over there.
The thought process for me is, and I have the thought process for fantasy football, and we could just wrap this show up. I want to kind of end it on this note here. I want to get your thought process. I understand teams need quarterbacks, but why even waste your time with guys like Tyrod Taylor? Why waste your time with guys that have had years to wow us we're not wowed? Like, I know the Browns need a backup, but Case Keenum, really, he's not going to win you anything, right?
Yeah, but he played with Stefanski in Minnesota, and I think he's insurance. If Baker goes down, say he gets knocked out with a shoulder for a couple of weeks, Keenum comes in, throws for 300 yards like he did in Minnesota, he's going to be the starter the rest of the year.
Right.
I think that tells you that he does not believe in Baker Mayfield.
Right. Good
and
point.
That's what I think.
There's a lot of quarterbacks that just are not going to get you there. Darnold, I don't care.
Flacco, he just got released.
He started like, what are the Broncos thinking? Hey, we're going to start Flacco this year.
Well, who else do you have for options? That's the problem.
That's true, right? But I mean,
you have to look at that. Like, who else do you have?
Got to focus on getting guys that are those ace quarterbacks.
I mean, what if the Dolphins draft Tua? Then was he gonna? Is Josh Rosen gonna? He's gonna get traded to his third team in 3 years?
Yeah.
I mean, he's never really had a fair shot. I don't think he's an elite quarterback, but I think he's not bad. He's a good backup. But I don't know what the Chargers. I mean, they have to draft somebody. They just don't have. I mean, you're playing in one of the tougher divisions in football, right?
But is the thought process, hey, we're going to run this year with Darnold, knowing he's not going to take us anywhere, but it's going to be a rebuilding year. I think that's the thought process here.
Well, not with Darnold. Darnold is their guy. I mean,
they on him.
They took him in the top 5. He's still young, and he had his little mono episode last year and whatever. I mean, this is his year, but he doesn't have any weapons. I mean, it sucks.
Right.
I mean, he was actually pretty good when he started last year.
He's viable.
He had a winning record, didn't he?
Yeah, he's viable, but yeah,
look who they had as a second and third string quarterback. Forget about fantasy for a second. Talk about reality. He won some games last year. They were impressive in some weeks without any help. And I honestly, I think they need to get rid of that coach. I mean, I think he's a major problem. And I think they need a couple receivers for Darnold. I don't know where they pick in the draft off the top of my head. I think they're a team that needs to draft 2 receivers in the first 2 rounds. He doesn't have any help. I mean, they struck out. They did get a lot of depth on the O-line. I don't think they got anyone really, really good. But listen, you can't be a great fantasy quarterback with a horrible O-line. It's not going to happen. So I think you have to look at those things too.
You got to help him. Like, Allen did okay last year. Look at Josh Allen. I think he's elite. He's
Kyle Allen?
No, Josh from Buffalo.
Oh, Josh Allen.
He didn't have a lot of weapons. He did okay. Now they've got him Diggs. I think he's going to take a step forward this year. So
yeah, but they have such a great coaching staff, such a great team. How do you think Diggs is going to be there?
Oh, man, I don't know. I think he's going to demand the ball. I think there's going to be some chemistry there. I think there's a ton of upside for him. I think I might draft him. I think I may consider.
He's definitely their guy.
He's a must-have, I think.
And Josh Allen has the swagger. He's got the leadership, and I think he's going to try to make it happen. I think he's going to force too many balls to Diggs and throw some picks at times. But Diggs, by default, is definitely going to put up statistics if he stays healthy.
I think there's a ton of upside. I mean, if you go robust RB, if I got Kenny Galladay sitting there in 4, I don't think Diggs is going to fall to round 4 or 5 in fantasy drafts. But if I can end up with Galladay and Diggs as my wide receivers, and I got my workhorse running backs early on, I'm a happy person for fantasy football 2020. I really am. I think there's some
Really?
upside. Yeah, and you get some sleepers later on. You get your A.J. Browns, your Debo Samuels, your McLarens later on as sleepers.
What about the Ravens?
I think they need wide receivers, but I don't know, man. I think Lamar.
Are you buying or selling?
What, on Lamar or just?
No, on the Ravens. Are they moving? Are they staying in first or are they going down?
I think they're going to take a step back this year. I hope Lamar doesn't get hurt. But when you
Bengals, they can't take them. They signed a lot of depth though this year. I was surprised. They spent the most money they've spent in I think ever in free agency, but they're not going to compete.
Right.
You know, I mean, I can't say that. If Burrow comes in and he's the real deal, they got AJ Green's healthy. They got a decent running back. I mean, maybe they surprise some teams. I mean, Cleveland, I don't know. Cleveland obviously is a mystery.
I'm not sold on Cleveland. No, screw that.
Pittsburgh.
Baltimore concerns me because I really feel, and I hope not, I like the guy. He even liked one of my posts. I was talking. I really like Lamar, but I think he gets this year. You can't rush 1,200 yards as a quarterback and expect to stay healthy the whole season. Too much. Too many attempts.
No, I think he's doing the right thing as being a leader there, and I think the NFL would love to make him the face of the NFL coming up. They need some guys to replace the Bradys, to replace the Aaron Rodgers. They need to replace those guys, and they're really counting on him as to being a face of the league. And this is going to be a huge year for him. Very, very big. And he made so much progress going from year 1 to year 2. Remember when he played his rookie year, he couldn't barely throw the ball.
Right.
Maybe they didn't allow him to, but hey, they have a good team. I think they need help. They got rid of Hayden Hurst, I believe, right?
Right.
He went to Atlanta.
Yes.
And see, Atlanta, I mean, they got 4 skill players, but they signed Deante Johnson, but they have really no muscle. They have no, I don't know. They're just one of those teams all flash,
So much to talk about, man. Just so much to talk about. We could go on about this, Oliver. So, yeah, again, some wide receiver must-have. Just to recap, who did you say? I like Adams. I said a lot. We both like Galladay a lot.
Galladay.
Sutton as a sleeper. Debo, A.J. Brown.
I think Hopkins a little better than you do.
Yeah, I think you do. I
like Hunter Renfrow to step up his game.
Great sleeper there, for sure.
Sleeper. Yeah, I like him. I mean, listen, there's a lot of guys that can be good, but I like those guys. I really do. And I look at the teams that throw the ball. You have to look at the coaches. You have to look at who's in there. I look at who's going to throw the ball more.
Right.
I don't like Diggs as much just because I know Buffalo's going to run the ball. Allen's not a consistent passer. I don't like the Chargers wide receivers because Tyrod Taylor has never really had it with the receivers when he was in Buffalo and places. Remember he had that tight end over there. Was that Clay? He made some big plays, but he can't throw the deep ball, Tyrod Taylor. I just think it's going to be a disaster. I would stay away from Chargers wide receivers, especially early on in a fantasy draft. Not that you'd listen to me because I'm no fantasy guy. But
one guy we didn't talk about, just keep him on your radar, is Mccall Hardman. I think he takes a step forward this season. I think, with Tyreek Hill, he's been injured in the past, some offseason issues. Anything happens there could take a leap forward as well.
Yeah, Chiefs, they obviously the team to beat. Their best receiver is probably their tight end, Travis Kelce. 100%. I mean, there's a lot of good but a lot of the tight ends now are receivers. They don't block much. I'm not saying he can't block. I'm just saying in general. So there's a ton of wide receivers in the draft this year. There's a ton of wide receivers. There's a ton of teams that don't have wide receivers. Philly, they don't have anybody. I mean, Alshon Jeffrey's coming back. Philly needs to reload. The Raiders need to reload. I mean, you name it. The Patriots don't really have much. I mean, Edelman, what's he going to do without Brady? Would you touch him?
No, I'm concerned, man. I don't even know what the quarterback situation is like. I'm staying away from Patriots right now, man, to be honest with you. But Edelman could be good.
Sony Michelle?
I'm staying away. I mean,
all the way?
Well, if they decide to make him more of a volume guy, if they make him the guy that he's supposed to be, which is a 3-down back, but that won't happen. They've got
Cam Newton. What if he goes there?
It doesn't excite me.
I don't know if he's healthy.
New system, but again, we could talk about this all day. I kind of wanted to focus on wide receivers. Don't go off a tangent. We'll do quarterbacks next week or something like that. Man. But to wrap this up, let's just keep the off-season stuff happening. We're going to get you on every Wednesday. Ideally, we did this a little bit later in the week this week. We both got a little tied up. Grocery shopping, because that takes me hours to do now. It's like walking on eggshells. But anyway, you got to be careful out there, everybody. Stay safe. And Tom, thanks for that amazing insight to give that perspective. And
Thank you. See you next week.
All right, guys. See you next week. Those are your wide receiver must-haves. I only think is running back all time for fantasy. Wide receiver must-haves 2020, guys. Hope you enjoyed the show. Tom is going to be coming on a lot more with us. Thanks, Tom, for being here, guys. Stay safe, and we are out.